In the not-so-distant future, enigmatic creatures emerge unexpectedly, wreaking havoc on humanity and leading to an apocalyptic event that claims countless lives. The origins of these creatures remain shrouded in mystery, with various speculations circulating, such as a contagious insect, a purple haze, or a divine retribution. However, all these theories are mere rumors, and the true story eludes everyone. In a small town, a man named Paul is on a quest for essential provisions when suddenly, blaring sirens pierce the air. Reacting swiftly, he dashes outside, navigating the streets cautiously, taking cover whenever necessary, and avoiding the sounds of agony and explosions. As the city becomes engulfed in billowing black smoke, Paul manages to reach an abandoned house on the outskirts, where he reunites with his young children, whom he must now care for alone. 15 years pass, and Paul's boys have grown into robust teenagers. They reside in the same house and venture out during daylight hours to scavenge for supplies, adopting a policy of staying hidden during the night. As soon as the sun begins to set, Joseph secures the windows and instructs their loyal dog, Rocco, to enter the house. Paul waits outside, anxiously anticipating Thomas's return, and reprimands him for his tardiness. Thomas explains that he was assisting their neighbors, the Rose family, who own a farm. The three of them diligently secure every door and window before settling down for dinner. Paul scolds Thomas once again, warning him that any future lateness will result in being confined to their boundaries permanently. Joseph playfully mocks his brother, leading to a heated argument that escalates into a physical altercation. However, Paul swiftly intervenes, reminding them that they are men, not animals. After dinner, Paul observes his sons engaged in a game of chess, but becomes distracted when their dog, Rocco, starts scratching and growling at the floor. Interpreting it as an omen, Paul and Thomas venture downstairs, only to be startled by a sudden pounding on the door. The creatures outside are attempting to break in, prompting Paul and Thomas to desperately hold the door shut, thwarting their relentless assault. After a tumultuous period of shaking and pounding, the creatures eventually give up and retreat. Thomas calls out Joseph for not offering assistance, but Joseph reveals that he was listening attentively to gather more information. There were 3 attempts. The first lasted 10 seconds, the second lasted 20, and the third was a frustrated but feeble strike. Joseph speculates that the first was a test, the second was a genuine attempt to breach their defenses, and the third represented the creature's frustration. The following day, they inspect the door, revealing numerous claw marks etched into the weakened wood. Recognizing the door's compromised strength, Paul and his sons venture outside to search for wood to reinforce it. They gather all the materials they find and return to the house. While Thomas begins chopping the wood, Paul checks on Joseph, who is diligently constructing something in the barn. After some prodding, Joseph admits that he has been attempting to build a vehicle, driven by his desire to overcome their confined and fearful existence. However, his efforts have been in vain. Impressed by Joseph's determination, Paul lends a hand, making a few adjustments that finally bring the car to life. Filled with excitement, Paul takes his teenage sons on a ride to teach them how to drive. After an hour of exploration, they head back home, where Paul announces that the windows still require reinforcement. He sends the boys to the river to salvage materials, much to Thomas's chagrin, as he had anticipated visiting the farm. Paul asserts the importance of their current task, leading to resentment from Thomas, who accuses Joseph of orchestrating the situation to protect himself. In response, Thomas exits the car when they pass by the farm, requesting Joseph to pick him up on their return journey. Back at the house, Paul completes the reinforcement of the door and takes a solitary break to smoke near a waterfall. Surveying his surroundings, he notices a foreboding black hole nestled within the rocks. Meanwhile, Joseph arrives at the river and secures himself to the car before descending into an old, abandoned ship in search of supplies. Among the items he discovers inside a locker is a provocative image torn from a tattered magazine, leaving him momentarily speechless. As he continues his exploration, he is startled by a swarm of insects emerging from a pile of trash, buzzing menacingly around him and attempting to make contact with his skin. Swiftly, he retreats from the treacherous environment. At the farm, Thomas assists the family with their chores, but it becomes evident that his primary motive for visiting is his affection for Charlotte, the owner's daughter. The teenagers' mutual attraction is palpable as they embark on a leisurely stroll through the fields. Charlotte unveils a rope tied to a tree, recounting how, as a child, she was only allowed to play outside while remaining in physical contact with the tree. To expand her range while adhering to the rules, she would tether herself. They also engage in a game where they share outlandish theories about the cause of the apocalypse. When it's time for Thomas to depart, Charlotte bids him a tight farewell hug. With the sun dipping below the horizon, both both boys hasten their return. Paul arrives home, growing increasingly concerned as he finds Rocco, but neither of his sons. Joseph returns to the car, which initially refuses to start, but after a few attempts, he manages to get it running. Meanwhile, Thomas sprints as fast as he can, but loses his footing and tumbles into a crevice. When Joseph reaches the spot, he fails to spot his brother and continues driving. Once he arrives home and recounts the situation to his father, Paul instructs him to enter the house and secure all the entrances while he embarks on a search for Thomas. In the crevice, Thomas regains consciousness, experiencing considerable pain throughout his body. Using a flashlight, he begins to scan the area, and his astonishment grows as he witnesses a creature extending its hand through a hole in the wall. The creature emits a piercing screech, catching the attention of Paul and Rocco. With caution, Thomas retrieves a small knife and swiftly stabs the monster's hand, forcing it to retreat into the hole. However, as Thomas steps back, another creature appears from above, seizing his face. Thomas struggles to breathe, teetering on the brink of unconsciousness. Just in time, Paul arrives and yanks the creature away, swiftly dispatching it. Ensuring Thomas is unharmed, Paul and Rocco discover a hidden tunnel leading them directly to the crevice. Aware of the dangers of navigating the forest at night, they opt to remain in the crevice until sunrise, fortifying the entrance for protection. The sound of approaching creatures through the hole prompts them to prepare a flare, but suddenly the ground starts shaking. It becomes evident that the monsters have begun moving underground, sealing off the crevice by burying the exit with dirt. Rocco continues to bark while the crevice rumbles incessantly. Paul instructs his son and the dog to retreat as he ignites the flare and drops it into the opening in the ground. When the creatures attempt to reach out, Paul triggers a small explosion, inadvertently injuring himself. In the house, Joseph hears unsettling creaking sounds and starts formulating a plan. Minutes later, he positions himself in front of the main door, securing a rope to his chair before drifting off to sleep. Soon enough, a creature manipulates the wood covering a hole in the door and extends its appendage inside, testing if Joseph is truly asleep. Believing he has successfully deceived the creature, Joseph activates the rope, causing a cage to descend from the ceiling, instantly capturing the creature. Proud of his ingenuity, Joseph covers the cage with a blanket and settles down to sleep. The next morning, Joseph grows worried as there is no sign of the others. He sets out in the car to search for them. Meanwhile, Thomas manages to clear the entrance by digging through the collapsed dirt and pulls his heavily wounded father out. Rocco emerges as well and follows the sound of the car, leading Joseph back to his family. The brothers work together to carry Paul to the car and then to his bed in the house. As they discuss their next steps, Thomas finally notices the cage and lifts the blanket, causing the creature to become agitated. Joseph rushes to cover the cage again, explaining that light harms the monsters. They proceed to tend to Paul's injuries, during which Joseph reveals that the creature took only 8 seconds to enter the previous night, the shortest time yet. He also suspects there was a second creature that retreated. Their behavior is rapidly changing, leading Joseph to conclude that something is amiss. Thomas points out that the creatures are intelligent, suggesting that their attack on the house might be driven by revenge since they rarely targeted the farm. Joseph disagrees, believing only Paul poses a threat to the creatures. To prove his point, Thomas attempts to kill the caged creature, prompting Joseph to intervene, wanting to study it. In the ensuing struggle, the creature escapes and hides under the bed. When it finally emerges, Rocco starts barking, causing the monster to transform and attack. Joseph rushes to restrain it, allowing Thomas to sever its head with an axe. Still curious, Joseph takes the creature's body to the barn, hoping to gain further insights, while Rocco and a swarm of bugs observe. Despite his efforts, dissecting the creature yields no additional understanding. Thomas suggests taking Paul to Charlotte's farm, where they have a better house and access to medicine. Joseph doubts that the Roses will be willing to help, but Thomas insists, and Joseph reluctantly accompanies him. They place Paul back in the car and drive to the farm, where Charlotte's parents confirm Joseph's skepticism, refusing to take in someone severely injured. Charlotte protests, but her pleas go unheard. However, her parents agree to let Thomas stay, leaving Paul and Joseph with more resources at their own house. Joseph walks away in frustration, and Thomas follows, leading to a heated argument where Joseph blames Thomas for their father's impending death. In a fit of anger, Thomas pushes Joseph to the ground, but quickly relents upon realizing his actions. Joseph promptly gets into the car and drives away with their unconscious father, while Thomas remains with the family at the farm. Later, Charlotte offers Thomas some quality food and shares personal items he has never seen before. The two share a tender moment and a kiss, interrupted by Charlotte's father, who sends her to another room. On his way back, Joseph notices the sheep fleeing in fear and mounds of dirt scattered about, indicating that the creatures are moving underground. When he returns home, he spots a trail of dirt near the wall, raising concerns that the monsters may already be inside the house. After tending to his father's needs, Joseph collects various objects from the barn to devise a new plan. He proceeds to block all the windows, and as he moves around the house, he accidentally falls through a carpet, revealing a hidden hole beneath it. Joseph deduces that the monsters have infiltrated the building. At the farm, Charlotte discovers Thomas snooping around the kitchen. Worried about his father, Thomas seeks medicine and intends to leave. Charlotte provides him with the necessary supplies, and they share a hug as he promises to return, unaware that someone may be eavesdropping on them. Thomas makes a swift dash toward the gate, attempting to escape, but his path is blocked by a farm employee who points a gun at him, accusing him of theft. Desperately, Thomas tries to explain that Charlotte had given him the item, but the man remains unconvinced. The other employees gather together, overpowering Thomas and taking him to the barn. They proceed to restrain him and drown out any noise with loud music, masking their sinister intentions. As they grab hold of Thomas's legs, preparing to execute their plan, a miraculous turn of events occurs. A hole suddenly opens beneath one of the men, causing him to plummet, thus foiling the imminent shot. The remaining men rush to check on their fallen comrade, just as a creature emerges from the hole. In the main house, Charlotte's parents are awakened by a disturbance. Her father, armed with a candle, ventures forth to investigate, only to be confronted by a creature that attacks him. In the ensuing struggle, the candle falls, igniting a fire while the monster transitions its attention to Charlotte's mother, aiming to harm them both. The father manages to pull the creature back, but the mother flees the room in search of Charlotte. Tragically, the creature pounces on her before she can get far, transforming and violently assaulting her before delivering a fatal blow. In her bedroom, Charlotte is jolted awake by the sounds of her parents' demise. As the noise subsides, she cautiously emerges from her room, horrified to discover a trail of blood. Driven by dread, she follows the trail, leading her to the bathroom where she encounters the creature with her mother's lifeless body on its back. Meanwhile, at the barn, the men valiantly attempt to fend off the onslaught of creatures, but their efforts prove futile. One by one, they fall victim to the monsters, and those who manage to escape find themselves pursued relentlessly as more creatures arrive. The barn becomes engulfed in flames, providing an opportunity for Thomas to leverage his surroundings. Using the furniture he's bound to, he manages to break free from his restraints. In that critical moment, a creature approaches him, only to be swiftly eliminated by Charlotte's well-aimed shot. The two teenagers flee from the barn, witnessing the house ablaze in the distance. Charlotte reveals the devastating news of her parents' demise, prompting them to agree to seek refuge at Thomas's place. Back at Joseph's house, he fortifies the entrance by heaving furniture into the hole, buying them precious time. He then checks on his unconscious father, tenderly kissing his forehead before preparing himself for the impending battle. Suddenly, the door's hole opens, but it turns out to be Thomas and Charlotte, not creatures. Joseph acknowledges his need for Thomas's assistance, but their conversation is interrupted by Paul regaining consciousness. Quickly taking his medication, Paul urges his sons to persevere. Joseph shares his plan with the group, and they gather all available gas cans from the barn while Rocco continues to bark, alerting them to incoming danger. They also relocate an old freezer into the house. Thomas and Charlotte diligently reinforce the remaining windows, while Joseph constructs a fuel-soaked furniture pile, incorporating explosive items and a burning cigarette. As the pile covers the hole, it begins to tremble, coinciding with a creature descending the chimney in Paul's room. Another monster emerges from the hole, and as it approaches a door, Thomas stealthily stabs it from behind. The creature retaliates, but Thomas retrieves his knife and delivers a fatal blow to its head. Charlotte faces off against a third creature, swiftly neutralizing it with her firearm. The trio reunites and resumes moving the freezer, only to be confronted by creatures bursting through the open door behind them. Paul, now up and covered in blood from slaying the chimney monster, stays behind to buy them time. Taking refuge inside the freezer, the group reminisces about Paul's protective embrace when they were babies. A fresh wave of creatures storms in, and Paul valiantly distracts them until the furniture pile finally explodes, engulfing the entire house in flames. The rolling freezer finally comes to a halt, prompting the teens to emerge anxiously and search the debris for Paul. However, a creature suddenly lunges at them. Racing to the car, they speed away as the flaming monster relentlessly pursues them. Charlotte's bullets prove ineffective, but she manages to incapacitate the creature by striking it with her gun. Several miles later, the group halts the car and gazes at the stars, a sight they had been deprived of during their time spent indoors outdoors at night. The following morning, they return to the destroyed house, deciding against rebuilding in the same location. Collecting whatever supplies they can salvage, they bury their loved ones and bid them a final farewell. The trio, joined by loyal Rocco, departs in the car, embarking on a quest to find a new home among the farms in the nearby valley. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. I always love hearing from my viewers, so feel free to leave a comment below with your thoughts on the video or any suggestions for future content. Once again, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video.